Wreck My Podcast.
Finally a hero who's giving the letter Z some representation, and I can appreciate that. This week we watched The Mask of Zorro in Wreck My 90s.
Wreck My Podcast.
Welcome to Wreck My Podcast, where this week we're talking about The Mask of Zorro. That's right, kind of a random one, but also really relevant in the sense of like the 90s since that's what we do on this podcast. But I'm here with my guest this week. She keeps my balls in a jar on her desk. It's Madison.
Hello.
Yeah.
This would be a very different movie if the body part in the jar was balls.
Yes, instead of a head and a hand.
Yes.
Actually, I was reading that there was a general in like the Revolutionary War who actually would like keep body parts in jars in like formaldehyde or whatever as like proof of like the like people he took out and stuff like that.
Well, it's funny because I've been listening to the Baymaw podcast and they were talking about how back in like biblical times, if you like conquered a city, you would put the people's heads on stakes outside the city.
So that's just not like a movie thing.
Conquered.
That's like actually happened in history.
Apparently.
That's
which is
so crazy.
disgusting.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because you see it in movies all the time and stuff with like the heads on the pike and all that.
Well, they do it even in Lord of the Rings once they like
even
conquer
in Star
the little...
Wars, they have like stormtrooper helmets in The Mandalorian.
I don't like it. That's gross.
No, yeah. So they did some crazy things back in the day. But yeah, so we're talking about The Mask of Zorro. This was one that I think I realized I had never had seen before. I think I had only seen The Legend of Zorro, which came out like 4 or 5 years later.
What is up with you only ever seeing the sequels? And I only ever watched the first one. Ace Ventura, The Pet Detective is my favorite one, but you only ever watched When Nature Calls.
Yeah.
I like this movie, but you watched the other
Lost
one.
World was my favorite.
And I only ever watched the first one.
Yeah, so it is kind of funny.
You and sequels, dude.
It's because all the sequels, I think, came out in like the early to mid 2000s, and that's when I started watching these things. So they were new. Or like the 90s, I was still kind of young and not really like looking for this type of stuff. But anyway, before we get into our talk about this, let's do a Jordan Explains the Movie real quick.
Sure.
Oh yes, it's time for Jordan to explain the movie quickly.
There's a guy in a mask
Yes, his name is...
who fights a villain and avenges people in need.
Nice.
That's literally the movie.
Robin Hood, but Mexican.
Or I was just going to say, like every superhero, Batman.
Yeah, it's true. Batman was
like a human doing what he can
Zorro
to help
came
others.
out in like the very early 1900s, I believe. Maybe even in the 1800s or something. Like the whole story of Zorro. And he's been credited as like the Batman. People were like, oh yeah, it's like Zorro. Like,
yeah,
you know, the guy who created Batman, something Kane might be his name. I can't remember who created Batman, but I'm pretty sure like Zorro was like one of his favorite things. But anyway, let's explain this movie.
Yes.
I like your rendition of it. But
I'm just telling you, that's what
I'm
it
gonna
is.
do my rendition because I wrote things down, and God forbid I wrote something down I don't get to say on the podcast, right? Rafael Montero defeats the bandit named Zorro and believes him to be dead. He takes Zorro's daughter as his own, but 20 years later, Zorro emerges to train another to don the mask. There are laughs, fights, and romance along the way as Zorro, young and old, try to stop the nefarious plans of Raphael. And wouldn't you know it, they do in the end.
That's perfect.
Yeah. I realized I actually forgot to finish my ending, so I had to make up the very end there. I stopped at nefarious plans of Raphael, and I was like, oh, I just started watching the movie and totally forgot to keep taking notes.
You did a great job. That's literally all it is.
So I was like, oh.
Yep.
Oh. What happened?
Yep.
They won. Okay, cool.
Yep.
We're good. All right. So, Madison, when do you remember the first time having seen this movie? Like, was it when it came out, or was it a little bit after?
I think it was when it came out. What year was it? Maybe that'll answer the question.
Yeah,
because if it was 92.
98.
Oh, yeah. Then I definitely watched it when it came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I would have been like 5 or something at the
Yeah,
time.
and your parents definitely had you watch stuff like this when you were like 6 years old.
I also feel like I remember really, really liking this movie. And I think around the time I was friends with somebody who lived on the street, and she was the one who showed me Clue. And like we watched a bunch of movies together. And this was one of those movies that I feel like we watched together a lot.
Yeah. So, like I said, I don't think I've ever seen this one till this time. I'm pretty sure I saw The Legend of Zorro, but as a kid, I was a huge Zorro fan. I loved the Disney-produced Guy Williams Zorro. Like, it would be on at like midnight every night, and I would because as a kid, I didn't fall asleep until like 2 a.m, and then I would sleep till noon. Like, very opposite of what I do now. But I would stay up and I would watch like 4 Zorros before I went to bed, and I used to love Zorro.
He's a good character.
It's a great character. I remember there was like the bumbling guard who was like in the town, like the big fat guy, and he was always like, when Zorro was Diego or whatever his name is, he would always be like friends with the guy, but then like when it was Zorro, he was like the nemesis. He was like, oh, Zorro was always like getting in the way of justice and whatnot.
Which is like every it's almost a trope, because I remember in Sailor Moon it was the same thing. Like when they were their like
tuxedo mask in her,
non-superhero selves, they hated each other, but when they were their superhero selves, they liked each other.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. But I loved that that show when I was a kid. So I was having fun watching this one. I thought it was super good, and I'm curious to watch The Legend of Zorro because I don't really remember actually thinking that was a good movie, but I thought this one was a pretty good movie. Like, it was one of those classic 90s films where it's like action, but comedy, but like kind of fun dialogue, but also kind of cheesy dialogue. And like, I noticed that it seemed like a lot of the backgrounds were like almost like matte paintings. Did you notice like a lot of the...
It looks a little bit, I don't know what the budget was. I'm sure you're going to tell me, but it didn't look like...
Great budget.
Overly...
It reminded me a lot of like the 80s movies like The Goonies, where like they have these like elaborate sets, but they don't look like great sets.
Well, I didn't know if they had like blown the budget on Anthony Hopkins.
Could be, because he was huge. Well, let's talk about Anthony Hopkins here for a minute. I cannot see him in a positive role. Like when I watch him as like a good guy, I'm like, no, there's something up. He's a bad guy. He's like Hannibal, Westworld. I just feel like he always plays like, I know him mostly as a bad guy.
Correct.
So when I see Anthony Hopkins as a good guy, I'm like, he can't be a good guy. Like I was thinking the whole time, like, what's gonna happen? He's gonna turn into like the bad guy or something here.
It's one of those things where you're like, not typecast, but like all of the iconic roles at least seem to be.
It's like if Mad Mikkelsen ever tried to play a good guy, you'd be like, no, Mad Mikkelsen is a bad guy in everything he does. That's just how he looks. So yeah, I thought that was kind of funny that like and also Anthony Hopkins, isn't he like Irish?
Well, I was going to say, is it
him?
Not inappropriate for him to be playing... Like, they made his skin darker and stuff.
It's like how everyone got pissed that Scarlett Johansson was the Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
And it's like the whitewashing of Hollywood. I'm like, I guess in the 90s we didn't really care, but I'm like, you're taking an Irish dude and you're passing him off as Spanish?
Did you look it up that he was Irish?
He's some type of Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, I can look
Welsh,
it up real quick.
maybe.
I was just curious because I'm like, he has like these like piercing blue eyes, and you're just like
Antonio
this,
Banderas makes sense
white skin
for playing a Mexican, because I don't think he's actually Mexican, but like he's some type of Hispanic, and that's close enough in Hollywood to like pass it off. Really, maybe Antonio Banderas is Mexican.
It says Anthony Hopkins, nationality American and British.
Yeah, so he's British. Like, why are we passing him off as a Spaniard?
Yeah,
is that offensive? Is Spaniard offensive?
I'm not sure.
Someone from Spain. Sorry if it is, but
and it says Antonio Banderas is a Spanish actor. So
yeah, okay. So that's
sense.
What was weird. A British actor playing a Spanish person and a Spanish actor playing a Mexican.
Yeah, it was a little interesting. But yeah, I thought it was like they made him like really, really tan to try and pass him off as not a very white British dude.
There had to have been a lot of good Spanish actors in the 90s.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. Also
is Catherine Zeta-Jones. Is she even Hispanic?
She sounds like she did a really good accent and stuff.
Yeah, but I thought she was some type of white too.
Up.
For some reason, I thought she was like French.
Did you really?
I don't know why. Yeah, it's so weird.
Catherine Zeta-Jones. I always forget how to spell it.
I know.
It's Zeta, not Zeta. That's
Zeta.
Why. Nationality. it says that she's Welsh.
Okay, so that's where I got the Welsh from, I guess.
Welsh-born actress.
So her and Anthony Hopkins come from the same aisle, but
yeah,
that's
interesting.
Funny. All right, so anyway, so watching this, I got that vibe that like the sets were kind of like made in like the 80s sense, where it's like, hey, these are really elaborate, even though they don't look great. Like Clash of the Titans.
Yeah.
Amazing sets. They look terrible by today's standards, but like super cool looking sets and everything. So this movie, the beginning was very reminiscent of Pirates of the Caribbean to me.
Loved it.
Where it's like the hanging's going to happen and then the hero jumps in and stops the hanging and it's like craziness
or
going
like Princess
around.
Bride.
Yeah, like Princess
Very Princess Bride.
Exactly. So that was like a lot of fun. I like that. And then he had the Bat Cave. Essentially, this is the Bat Cave, right?
Yes.
Like comparisons to Batman again. This thing looked exactly like the Keaton Bat Cave to me.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was great.
Very cool.
It was so cool. Naked cactus imprisonment I wrote down at the beginning when the Marietta brothers go into town and they like take all the the stuff and they like tie them in a like they make all the
like a ring
guards
around
naked,
the rosy.
and tie all their hands and make a ring around a cactus and I'm like, ooh, that.
Also, what is it called when you have a farmer stand for your butt? That's like the funniest thing to me. Like what is it called?
A barista tan. I don't know.
Yeah, like what is like the copper tone?
Yes, the copper tone baby butt.
This is what these men look like.
Yes.
It was cracking me up.
That was funny. This movie was a lot more brutal and violent than I thought it was going to be. There were a lot of moments where I was like, damn. Like,
also, just pull on your heartstrings in general, because when you end up fighting like they're using pretty much like slave labor, and then they show the kids, and then the kid has the thing on its head. Yeah, and then you're like, oh
also,
my gosh.
I thought it was crazy too. One of the it was a funny moment, but also it was like, damn, was when Crazy Joe, or I forget the dude the Marietta brothers are with. He's like the crazy guy, and then later on we see him again, and he tries to jump the guy, and he gets shot in midair and like defies physics by just like stopping dead in air and dying from the gunshot. I was like, that's a little brutal. Like,
it was a little much.
Yeah. So there were some pretty intense scenes in this movie. It was a bit more violent than I thought.
I think because you think Zorro, like, oh, it's just going to be like sword play, like Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah. You're kind of just going to be fighting. But no, there was a lot of stuff. It
was pretty brutal in parts. So this is like Robin Hood as well. Like Robin Hood meets Batman. A lot of those, which I don't know when Robin Hood came out. That had to have been like 1800s, 1700s, because he was a folklore in, I think, Britain, somewhere in Europe, right? I'm
sure I can look it up, but yeah, I feel like Robin Hood has been around for
Robin Hood has to be like, probably was he the Grimm brothers Grimm, like one of their fairy tales maybe? I don't know what his origin story is, but there was a lot of reminiscence here.
How interesting. This can't be right. Oh, it's showing me the movie. I was going to say, it says 1973.
No.
It says... Wait, it's still saying 1973.
Maybe it's more recent than I think. Maybe it isn't like an old school story. It could very well be something newer that got brought up. Yeah. But the whole idea of like taking from the rich, giving to the poor, that's nothing new, right? That's like what the whole French Revolution was about. Like, so it makes sense that people would kind of take these stories.
It has to be older, because there's movies from like the 1930s that have Robin Hood. So.
Yeah, so I'd say like the 1800s.
Older.
Yeah, it's older. You know what was really funny is the dude who played the Texas commander, he looks exactly like Wyatt Russell to me.
And Ewan McGregor.
A little bit of Ewan McGregor, but
he has his same like resting bitch face.
Yeah. Well, I thought like Wyatt Russell with his hair and facial hair from the Falcon and Winter Soldier looked almost identical. Like Wyatt Russell right now with the facial hair, they looked so similar to each other. It's so weird to me.
Is Ryan Russell also the guy who recently played Tommy Lee in Pam and Tommy or whatever that
No,
show
that's Sebastian
a different
Stan.
Guy.
That's the Winter Soldier. Wyatt Russell is Kurt Russell's son, and he played
sorry, I was getting confused.
Knockoff brand Captain America and stuff. So yeah,
I was getting confused.
Yeah, no, he was in something else recently we watched too. He's like definitely making a name for himself in the acting world for sure. There was a lot of slapstick in it, which I'm happy they kind of kept that around, because that's vintage Zorro for sure.
They did the whole thing where he's like trying to like master the horse, and the horse goes into position, but then jumps out at the last second.
A lot of like the funny swordplay stuff, like when he cuts the clothes off of her and stuff like that. Like I mean, granted, say what you will about feminism.
I was just going to say, it's so 90s to be like, look, she's getting naked.
Well,
like,
I don't remember if I wrote this down or not. It might be later in my fun facts, but Catherine Zeta-Jones like said in an interview like years later, she's like, I have a confession to make. That scene where we were doing the fighting and stuff, she's like, I actually got turned on while we were filming it.
What?
Yeah, like
why?
Because it was so like passionate. It's Antonio Banderas.
Wait, are you talking about the dance scene?
The
or when he was
the dance scene.
Yeah, it's the
dance scene. Yeah.
You could visibly tell the chemistry between the two of them in that scene.
Yes.
Also, I feel like who doesn't have chemistry with Antonio Banderas?
Oh, yeah.
He seems funny and also like...
He could make a wood stump look good in a movie.
Yeah, like I feel like I could definitely see
Antonio
them.
Banderas is what Orlando Bloom was in the early 2000s. That was what he was to the 90s.
Yeah,
right?
I could see
they
that.
They look similar. Like the way they act in movies are very similar. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like,
I could see that.
Antonio Banderas could have been Legolas if they wanted to age him up a bit.
Yeah. No, I feel like their chemistry was just
it was
really
great.
good. Yeah.
It was great. So we talked about the Texas Commander having like the head of the brother in a jar. And stuff. One of the scenes that was so gross was that Antonio Banderas like drinks the water out of the jar, and I'm like,
to prove a point.
But I'm like, no one should. That's so forever.
No, but I
unclean.
feel like that is. I feel like that makes him such a badass because you're like, oh my gosh, like the mental power to not even grimace. Like he's like outright just showing the dude like you have nothing on me.
Yeah,
like,
what are you talking about? I don't know who this guy is.
You don't know who I am and you don't know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, he's
like,
a badass.
It's an amazing moment, but a disgusting one.
Disgusting. I just wrote unsanitary.
I was even thinking like, even like in movies when they're like drinking wine, they're not normally actually drinking wine. What was he drinking?
Oh, I'm sure there was like some
because
type
there's
of
like a prosthetic or
there.
Something in there. So I'm like,
clean. I imagine
even
it was
that's
clean.
kind of gross.
Yeah, it is kind of gross. But
because they made it look pretty realistic.
It was very
realistic.
So
gross.
But they did have like tequila bottles with like scorpions and snakes in them and stuff. So I guess it's like if you can do that, I don't know. So another comparison between Antonio Banderas and Orlando Bloom is the classic like surfing scene, right? Like Legolas surfed down with a shield,
which is one of the best parts.
And Zorro, he grabs a shovel and surfs down like
down the little
canyon.
hill.
Yeah,
yes,
it's like classic,
great job,
so good choreography for like this time period. And that's everything that I really have that I noticed while watching. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie.
I thought it was really good. I think it's kind of I'm sure you can think of another story that's like this, but like at the beginning he's kind of unruly and like he just is passionate and crazy and like and then the older Zorro kind of like sees the passion in him but just knows it kind of needs to be tamed and like wrangled in, and then they do the whole montage where he's learning how to like do the sword fight. I love that. I feel like that's so classic 90s. Like those kind of scenes will never not give me nostalgia. Yeah, it's so good. And then I think you and I both were saying that we got goosebumps when he like first gets in the Zorro outfit.
Oh my gosh,
like, because at first he's kind of like just in his like
regular outfit,
regular stuff.
But when he's in the full getup with the hat and the black and the cape, and I'm just
the part where they are dancing, I'm like, just watching them dance is like amazing. Like even like sexiness aside, just like seeing two people dance, you're like, whoa, like this is so cool. And I thought the costumes were like amazing. Like she always looks so good. Like I love it. And I thought the whole like thing at the beginning where like she comes like first like into California and then she like immediately knows, she like recognizes the smell, but they're like, no, you've never been here. Like I feel like they kind of set up the mystery and she's trying to figure it out too. Like I just thought the whole movie, like it's still held up in my opinion.
Even it was a longer one, like it was 2 hours and 15 minutes, but I feel like it flowed very well.
And I think they did a good job like bringing it for like full circle. Like how the movie started is like kind of how the movie ended, because then you see them. And also, spoiler alert, I mean, can you even do spoiler alerts?
No,
this movie's been out forever.
If you're also listening to this,
but you did bring up a good point where at the end, like Antonio Banderas is fighting like the captain, and then old Zorro's fighting like the
Raphael.
And at the very end, Anthony Hopkins dies, the old Zorro, and then you even said, you're like, so he just has to die for no reason. Like he didn't get stabbed. It didn't look like
he's too tired. He died from being tired.
That's what I was saying. I'm like, did they just feel like he had to die so that like Zorro could be Zorro.
It felt like a
I'm
pivotal scene was missing or something. So I'm like,
we both were like, wait, what happened? But
yeah,
it was pretty much just to be like, he lived to serve his purpose.
He passed on the torch, but I'm like, yeah, he didn't like.
He didn't have a big scene, it seemed like, where he got fatally hurt.
It was very weird. I feel like they could have done a little bit of a better job with that, but I understand the sentiment. They just didn't execute it very well. But yeah, it was.
But overall, it was a really good movie.
Overall, it was a really good movie. I liked it. So let's talk a little bit about the stuff in this movie, like people in it and all that.
Oh, sure.
So it came out July 17th, 1998. It had a $95 million budget.
Whoa.
It only grossed 94. Now,
that's not the worst we've heard.
No, worldwide it grossed 290 something, but just in the United States, it was. So that's technically not a success if in your main country you're not grossing back your money. But whatever, they made a second one. Couldn't have done that bad, right? Yeah. It was filmed mostly in Mexico with a few scenes done in Orlando, Florida.
Ah.
Yeah, kind of funny. But everything else was in Mexico, which makes sense. Yeah. It was very Mexican environment,
oriented,
so it makes sense. 83% critic score on Rotten Tomato.
Good.
73% audience. So the critics
surprising.
Liked this movie. I thought the audience score would be higher than the critic score, to be honest. But so this was directed by a man named Martin Campbell. He also directed The Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds. But he also directed GoldenEye, my favorite Pierce Brosnan, or not my favorite, the best Pierce Brosnan one. My favorite is the most campy one.
Yeah.
And he directed Casino Royale.
Oh, there you go.
Like probably arguably the best Daniel Craig one as well.
So you got into the James Bond
And he
scene.
also directed The Legend of Zorro. So he directed both of them. But it's funny that he had such good movies under his belt, and then The Green Lantern was just like, what happened there, man?
I think that's for like the entire cast. The only thing good that came out of that movie is that's how Ryan Reynolds met his now wife. Yeah. Right? Blake
and
Lively.
Also, we got a good joke in Deadpool about that.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So in this movie, Anthony Hopkins is in it, as we said. Westworld, Hannibal Lecter, most known for those roles, but he's in like a million things. He was in a Transformers movie like 5 or 6 years ago. Like this dude is prolific. Like everyone knows who Anthony Hopkins is. Antonio Banderas, we talked about, Spy Kids, Once Upon a Time in Mexico. I forgot he was the voice of Puss in Boots in all those Shrek movies.
Which is amazing.
I love Antonio Banderas. Even in our Spy Kids episode, I'm just like, this dude is a treasure.
He was great.
He's so good.
Arguably the best part.
Yeah, I love it. And then, okay, so that Texas captain we were talking about, who I thought looked like Wyatt Russell, his name is Matt Letcher. And I wanted to mention him because he's in the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix that we enjoyed, even though it was kind of a weird one. Yeah. But I forgot where I knew him from. He plays Eobard Thawne in the Flash TV series, who is the Reverse Flash.
Okay.
So I forgot that he was a really major character that keeps showing up in the Flash series. I'm like, that's where I know this guy from. He's Eobard. It totally makes sense. Okay, and then Catherine Zeta-Jones we talked about.
Yeah,
she was in Chicago.
She won an Academy Award.
Was she in anything else besides that's like known? Because that's the only thing I remember her being in is Chicago.
No, I'm sure she's in a lot of
She was also in Threat Level Midnight.
Well, yeah. No, she's like a notable actor.
Yeah, she is. I was trying to think of anything else off the top of my head.
I'm sure if I looked it up, I could
I don't care about looking it up. I was just like, what do I know her from? Chicago is
the two things I watched the most were definitely Mask of Zorro and Chicago.
Yeah. So, all right. Steven Spielberg, executive producer on this movie. And the composer is a man named James Horner. He also composed the music for Titanic, as well as Avatar, The Big Blue People. Not Avatar, The Last Airbender, Avatar, The Big Blue People.
So he worked with James Cameron a bunch.
Yes. But those are some big movies to do compositions for. I'm like, did he write the Celine Dion song? I thought that was the only song in all of Titanic.
You gotta factor in all that background music.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, so let's move into fun facts.
What is facts? Baby, they're fun. They're fun. Oh yeah. What is facts? Baby, they're fun. They're fun. Oh yeah.
At the end, when Zorro confronts Captain Love, that's the Texas captain's name, he pulls Captain Love. It's like Mick Foley's like alter ego name, or something. Yeah. Right? Yeah. He pulls out his sword, and the sun glints off the blade, running the full length of sword. That was a cool scene. I like that.
We did see that.
That wasn't CGI.
Oh, that
was
actually
practical.
happened.
Yeah. And Antonio Banderas suggested doing it, like, in real life doing it. So he had to tilt the sword to catch the sun without breaking eye contact with the actor, and it only took 3 takes to get it.
Jeez.
That's
impressive.
I think there's a bit of luck there, because that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
It looked good, too.
I vividly remember that scene.
Yeah, it looked really good. Sir Anthony Hopkins impersonates Bernardo, the Zorro's like butler, in that one scene where they go to the captain's house or the Montero's house or whatever. Zorro's butler is in the original stories. Zorro was a major inspiration for Batman, and Bernardo became the butler, Alfred Pennyworth. So like that's another thing where like I forgot that he had like a butler in the original series.
They always have to have somebody.
And Hopkins was offered the role for Batman Begins before Michael Caine took it.
Ooh.
How weird would that have been to see Anthony I think Michael Caine is too perfect in that role. Anthony Hopkins, I don't feel like would have done as good of a job.
It's interesting because I feel like he would have done a good job, but it would have been different because I feel like Michael Caine always has this air of like pretentiousness.
Yes.
That I feel like kind of works.
Yes.
You see it in Miss Congeniality,
but he's
and
also
Batman
kind
and Alfred
too.
Yeah, but I'm like, Anthony Hopkins gives me the undertone of like I'm just kind of intimidated by you.
Yes.
And I don't feel like that would have been great for Alfred.
No. Although now we have like Jeremy Irons and stuff, and the Alfreds now are supposed to be like, oh, I was an ex-Marine,
which
or
is
something,
totally
you know?
fine. Yeah, it's just not the one like I'm.
No, that we kind of grew up on in the movies and stuff. So Steven Spielberg was asked to direct, but he declined because he was doing Saving Private Ryan that year. So he stayed on as executive producer, but I think Saving Private Ryan definitely was a more successful movie.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, very big movie. Fun fact about me, I've never seen that movie from beginning to end. I've only seen scenes. Yeah. Which Tom Hanks is in that one, right? I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
A bunch of people
He's
in that. Isn't Matt Damon in it?
I think Matt Damon. Yeah, there's a huge cast of people. I forget who the main character is, though.
Tom Hanks is the main character.
Is he the main guy?
He's the guy on the cover.
I wouldn't know because, again, I've watched them tons of scenes out of order, so I have no idea. I should watch that movie.
I think it's really sad.
It's sad and violent, but I mean,
those are not normally your nice vibe.
That's not. Yeah. No, you're right. Shakira, with her hips not lying, was offered the role of Alina. So instead of Catherine Zeta-Jones, it would have been like, "Hey, this is my daughter, Alina," and she'd be like, "I'm Alina."
Was she trying to be an actress?
Beats
Shakira?
Me. Her name was probably huge. It strikes me that they wanted a bunch of name recognition in this movie because they got Anthony Hopkins, Antonio Banderas. It makes sense they would have offered it to someone who, like, especially if they were like, we just want her here as like a sex symbol and to dance, like Shakira.
Yeah, that's true because the dance scene is a pretty intimate or like a big part of the movie for sure. Interesting.
So I don't think she would have done a great job acting. Shakira has, I don't think, to my recollection, ever acted in anything. Nothing successful, at least. So
yeah, I can't think of anything. No.
Maybe her music videos. That's about it. In Disney's Zorro, the 1957 television series, Don Diego de la Vega's romantic interest is a woman named Alina. So in this movie, they kind of retrofitted it to be Alina as his daughter, and I think Esperanza was his wife. The one that him and Raphael were like fighting over and stuff. When Don Diego escapes from prison, he does so by impersonating a dead body and being taken out in a shroud. This is how Edmond Dantes in The Count of Monte Cristo escapes Chateau d'If.
I was going to say it's literally the exact same thing.
This movie did have a lot of Count of Monte Cristo vibes, too.
Count of Monte Cristo is amazing.
It is. Who? Guy Pearce? Yeah.
But he's the bad guy.
Who's the other guy in it?
The guy, I can think of it. And
Sam
also
Rockwell.
Henry Cavill or whatever his name is from Superman.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah. That Count of Monte Cristo, the 90s one, or early 2000s, whenever that one came out, that one was really, really
so good.
But I also thought it was a little unrealistic that, like, he got buried alive and then, like, zombie hand came out.
Like, I mean, they always do the same thing with, like, Batman, too, where it's like he's human, but he's got a little bit of extra something. And they make it a nod to it at the beginning when she's like, oh, the daughter has your strength. Like he is not just a normal person. Like, he's got a little bit of extra something going on.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking to the death Anthony Hopkins' death. Mm-hmm. The movie was supposed to end with him dying in his daughter's arms.
Oh, okay.
And that whole like little epilogue thing about how you said like the end kind of matches the beginning. So that was put in after the fact. So it says here during post-production, filming was done. They're in the editing bay. Executive producer Steven Spielberg and director Martin Campbell decided that Don Diego's death in the arms of his daughter was too depressing. The ending where Alejandro and Alina are happily married with their infant son was added 3 months after filming had ended. So that's definitely some like B-unit footage right there, like coming in and being like, we messed up a little bit. I don't know if any focus groups had to do it or like they just knew. They were like, no, this is
It would have been
too
a
much.
very abrupt ending, too.
Very abrupt.
Yeah.
You never want to end that sad unless like that's the point of the movie.
Especially when the whole movie has like a lot of happy stuff happening, or like not even happy, like comedic, jokey, like it's borderline a comedy action.
100%.
Like, you know what I mean?
Action
Instead of just
comedy
like
for sure.
action drama.
This is like Rush Hour, right?
Yeah, I would say it's more in line with like they're trying to make you laugh the whole time. You can't have a very depressing ending.
No, that would have been, and you're right, that would have been so abrupt. There's been like, cool, he's dead, and then you save people, but like, we need a little bit of a bow on it. You know, that's the point of a movie, is to feel cathartic at the end, not just like, wow, that sucks. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's all my fun facts. That's the movie. It was so fun. I loved it.
It was.
Yeah,
it was really
great.
good. And I honestly don't think I've seen it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
So it was cool watching it again.
Yeah, I'd be curious how many people actually like rewatch this movie nowadays, because I feel like this one holds up. I don't feel like this one wrecked anything. I'm like, I would recommend people, if you want just a fun 90s movie, I would totally recommend it. It's like Gattaca that we've covered previously. I was like, okay, only certain people would probably get enjoyment out of this movie, but like this one, I'm like, yeah, standard audiences definitely would enjoy just kind of watching this fun little romp from the 90s. You know?
What did we watch it on? What platform?
Netflix. It's on
Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I'm pretty sure
So,
The Legend of Zorro is on there as well.
if you're listening to this in April of 2022,
yeah, or
it's
whenever
on
this comes
Netflix.
out. Yeah. Cool. So awesome. That's Zorro. Swish, swish, swish.
yeah,
That's my Z.
like you said,
Swish, swish,
representing the Z
representing
for the Xylingers.
Z's. There's not many. Like you said, though, you said, what about Superman? I thought that was a good joke.
I'm a comic.
You are a comic. All right. So go check us out, wreckmypodcast.com. We have a Patreon where you can support us there. We have a Redbubble store where you can get some merchandise. We're also on YouTube. Probably not this episode, though, because this one's audio only, and I don't really put the audio only episodes up there. But a lot of our other stuff is on there as well. Instagram, good place to go and follow us. And also, if you want to DM anything like suggestions or something, good place to do that. And then that's it. So we are going to do something else next week, because that's what we do on this podcast. We do other things and stuff and other things. Thanks for being on, Madison.
My pleasure.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Wreck My Podcast.